Anytime we're lighting things, I'm very happy. So go ahead and light this.
All right.
Oh! Oh, now we're living.
Yeah.
Welcome to The Aggressive Life. Today we're going to do something different. I always say that, don't I, Dirt?
This is actually different, though.
What do you mean? You mean I say that before and it's not different?
Well, I don't know if we've gone off-site before. And you've definitely never forged a sword during a podcast
that's right.
before.
We've gone off-site before. We've never dealt with fire and forging metallic objects before, and me insulting somebody in their manhood before. So today we're going to show you something, or help you hear something from when we recently just got out of the studio and we hit the road. Hit the road to do what? To forge a freaking sword. That's right. God bless America. Oh my gosh. Part of my job, I get to forge a sword. Man. A few weeks back, as part of my day job, I got to travel to Cedarlore Forge near Muncie, Indiana, to meet my new friend, David DelaGardelle. And we were shooting a really short video to use during a weekend service at my job, Crossroads Church in Cincinnati and in Lexington and Dayton and Columbus. But we had too much good stuff to squeeze into one little 2-minute video. So you get to hear the full thing right here on The Aggressive Life. A lot of fun stuff we talked about and did. David is a master bladesmith who makes high-end and functional weapons for individual collectors, museums, and big budget films like Thor. Yes, David literally made the swords you see in Marvel movies, like that big yellow gold one that, what's the guy's name? Iris?
Idris Elba.
Yeah, him.
Heimdall.
That awesome guy who my heart was so crushed when he was English. I found
he is English.
I like the English. But for like years and years and years, you played it off like you were an American, like you're proud to be an American, like American accent. All of a sudden, you're sporting an English accent because that's what you are. That kind of pissed me off, actually. I like him a lot. But anyway, that guy in Thor, he's using his very sword, David's sword, that he forged himself. These aren't little playthings. These things are the real deal. And I don't just want to talk to David about the ancient art of metalsmithing. I wanted to do it myself. So come along with me for a quick conversation with David, and then join us as we heat up some forge and get to work. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get to Cedarlore Forge, part of Cole Ironworks, right now on The Aggressive Life.
Well, introduce you. Who are you? What do you do?
My name is David DelaGardelle. I'm the owner of Cedarlore Forge, and I'm super blessed to also work here in this building at Cole Ironworks. And I was just describing to you, Brian, Cole is really a tool company, but we want to be more than that. We build hydraulic forging presses. They're basically glorified log splitters, but they're a little bit prettier than that. They squish hot metal for traditional blacksmiths, for bladesmiths, metal workers of all types. And we sell our machines around the world. And my connection to Cole Ironworks is that it was founded by my dear late friend Andy Davis. And when we met when we were like 6 years old. And our dads, kicked us in the rear and said, "Get off your Xbox and go do something outside." And it's a great idea. Let's go make a sword. And they're like, "Okay, maybe tone it down a bit. Maybe not a sword," but we did. And from the age of 6 to 15, Andy and we made swords. We learned together, and he was an incredible bladesmith, and we really pushed each other in that journey as brothers and kindred spirits. But Andy wisely took a really awesome route in that I introduced him to a friend of mine, my buddy Nathan Brandt, and they founded Cole Ironworks, the tool company. I continued in my passion and love, which is making mythic, epic, artistic, fully functional swords and knives.
You said Andy is late Andy. What happened to him?
So my dear friend Andy, he passed away unfortunately last year due to brain cancer. And so being here at Cole is really meaningful to me to continue on his legacy. We're a tool company, but what I like to explain to people more is that we really our purpose isn't just making tools and machines. It's to educate and inspire and equip anybody and everybody to get into the craft, which is the craft being, metalworking. It doesn't have to be swords or blades like I make, but we really want to empower, especially young people, to take that leap into this craft, which is a pretty intimidating, scary craft.
Right,
It's fire and sparks and a lot of stuff.
That's exactly why I'm here.
Yeah.
I want intimidating. I want fire. I want sparks.
I'm going to get it. You just get ready.
I cannot wait. So walk me through some of your creations here. This is pretty amazing.
Yeah, so my craft is, and my business is Cedarlore Forge, like I think I mentioned. And I just have a passion for really merging together my love of, history, biblical history, historical, facts about, warriors and soldiers and what does it mean to be a man and defend home and country and fight against evil, with, fun, more, I guess, pop culture, but I'm a huge Tolkien fan. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and all that stuff had a huge
Have you ever
impact on my
actually
life.
touched a real woman? If you're, because
Yes.
Because
Yes,
oftentimes people are the
yeah.
mythic and all that stuff.
It's true.
That's sometimes a challenge. That's not
It's
a challenge
true.
to you because you actually have a child, right?
I do have a son, amazing son. Yeah,
Right.
my girlfriend Chloe is incredible, and
You're not gonna stab me now that I said that.
No,
are you?
well, we'll see. No, it's and my son Boaz, he loves coming out here and learning the craft. I think what better way to welcome a young boy, a young man into masculinity.
Talk about a fantasy. If my dad had this kind of stuff and I could mess around with this stuff, you would be like a god to me. I would love that.
I'm definitely not that.
No,
but
geez.
and truthfully, I try to point people in my work to the Creator, and not in a heavy-handed, obnoxious, churchy, cheesy way, but love people and be like, hey, I don't care what you believe, I don't care who you are. Yeah. And I think I really do love and appreciate the works of Professor Tolkien and Lewis specifically because they were scholars and they had touched women. They
had. Yes.
I think Tolkien had like 5 or 6 children. Amazing.
I thought you were
guy.
gonna say 5 or 6 wives.
Yeah,
No.
But I appreciate the legacy that Tolkien and Lewis created in their writings. Obviously Lewis more as an explicit, outspoken believer, but Tolkien too, because they had respect and love for the ancient pagan myths. They didn't reject it as that's dirty, filthy stuff we don't want to touch. They said no, we see Christ. We see how God, whether people like it or believe it or not, has His hand in everything, every person's life, all throughout human history, and a lot of those ancient barbaric warrior myths, I think we're longing for the true hero that is Christ. And so their work, had a huge impact on my faith. I grew up in the church, for better or for worse, a lot of worse than that. And I feel like I didn't really fully understand the gospel until I read just the horrors those guys lived through in the war and came back stronger from it. A lot of guys who go through war like that say, forget you, God, and throw up the bird and, say, sayonara to my faith that I once held. Those guys walked away from literal hell on earth, believing in Christ more and loving the people around them more, I believe, when I read their writings and stuff. And so I'm not a poet or a writer, but I try to tell a story and honor, guys like Tolkien and Lewis in my work. And so
tell me about one of these guys.
Yeah, so there's amazing folks around the world who bless me with opportunities of crafting things like this. This is a somewhat historically inspired, but mostly Tolkienian-inspired fantasy sword, fully functional, no less. The blade was actually forged by a good buddy of mine named Rick Furr in Door County, Wisconsin. He blessed me with the blade to finish and carve and craft the grip and the scabbard all from scratch, and leaning into my unashamed love of Tolkien and all that nerdiness and fun. These the carvings I wove into the piece are actual illustrations that Professor Tolkien himself drew. So I tried to faithfully kind of transform his drawings into wood and steel. And when I'm doing a non-fantasy, non-Tolkienian blade, if it's historical, I'll obviously look at historical artifacts. I've been blessed with awesome opportunities to go to England and go to the Royal Armories and hold and study original artifacts, and that's a surreal experience.
So this is cool. You you milled out 2 halves of wood and then glued them together?
Actually it was the same board, cool. Ripped it down the middle, carved it out. There's probably almost a month's worth of work in just the scabbard alone, let alone the whole piece.
How do you get the pattern on these blades, like the watermarking look or whatever it is? How do you do that?
Yeah, I wish we had the time to do that today. We won't quite go that deep into the craft, but so that is, people debate what the proper terminology should be, but it's either pattern welding or Damascus steel. I prefer pattern welding as a term, but it's essentially, the simplest way I can describe it is like when you take 2 different colors of clay or Play-Doh, smash them together, fold them, and you see those colors swirling. it's like that with steel. So now historically, and this weaves a lot into a lot of biblical imagery, ancient smiths were going to an iron-rich place, dragging a magnet, finding iron ore in like dirt dust form. They would smelt that iron ore down into an ingot, looks like just a rough boulder of gnarly material, and they would have to, just out of the necessity of the material, fold it to refine that material. So for them, they were achieving patterns in their blade, not because they were even trying and it looks pretty and aesthetic, just because they had to. It was just the nature of getting a homogeneous bar.
So that's what this is. You're not going and etching or doing something to get this is the normal bend it over, bang, bend it over, and this is what naturally comes. Because it looks like it's just like an artist just said, this is how I would actually paint this on or etch this. That's interesting.
Yeah, every line you see was at one point in the beginning of the process a separate piece of steel. Wow. And so by fusing them together at extremely high heat, pressure, if running with the biblical imagery of if we are iron, like the verse, iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
Iron has to go through and steel has to go through quite a traumatic process to be refined and strengthened. And there's so much I could share on that topic that I would love to talk about.
Well, isn't that part of the magic of the samurai sword? Something about how many times they bend it over and pound it, or something. Is that what you do? You just keep banging it and it gets stronger and stronger, or how does that science work?
That's a good question. So again, historically they were refining and folding the steel to get out impurities, to make the blade more homogeneous and even, in terms of its strength and durability. But it's funny, I want to give a huge shout out to an incredible buddy of mine who's an amazing bladesmith and a follower of Christ, Pierce Richardson, Icarus Forge. Everybody should go follow his incredible work. He's out in Colorado. He was just here at my shop, and he was blowing my mind with biblical imagery and how that can weave into sword making. Because like I said, there's that verse of iron sharpens iron. I think a lot of pastors, scholars, authors assume, that the iron sharpens iron means men make each other stronger. That's not actually true. It's not. I don't think it's true in the biblical sense. It's not true in the metallurgical sense, and because sharpening a blade doesn't make it stronger. It makes it more effective. And again, shout out to Pierce, because these are his amazing ideas. Men can sharpen each other.
You can shout all you want, but we're going to be editing all these names out.
Oh, yeah, get rid of them, get rid of them.
Keep doing your shout out, but don't be upset they're not.
That's all right.
But you'll be able to tell them, I gave you but they edited it out of the video, unless for the Aggressive Life podcast. We might leave it in for that, but anyway, keep going.
Sure, just due credit. But a lot of people when they read that passage say, I guess, I got to strengthen other men, or other men needed to strengthen me. You can help refine another man, but I think what really strengthens a man is, the pain and suffering that life brings and that we all go through, both as men and women. But, I unashamedly, unapologetically in my craft have a heart for young men. And of course, I teach everybody, men, women, old, young. But long-term, my dream for this craft is to specifically empower fathers and sons. I've already taken part in different ministries, organizations where we are, and there's another thing me and some good friends of mine are working on, is we want to do, initiation of young men into masculinity, which our culture is just totally lacking.
It's a huge deal.
But back to the, metallurgical, biblical metaphors. Yeah, men can refine each other. They can make each other more effective, sharpening. But what makes a blade strong and tough and hard and resilient is the forging process, and specifically the heat treating process, the hardening process. So when I say heat treating, and this is what we're going to do today, heat treating encapsulates three main things. The first step is normalizing it, and this is coming after you have forged, which forging steel in and of itself is a traumatic experience for steel. Steel, in a weird sense, has almost a literal memory to it. Every hammer blow that you and I do on that steel, while it might not have a massive effect, if we were just to haphazardly wail away on steel and then quench it in oil, every hammer blow that we make would just corkscrew the blade. It would go just absolutely wonky and be crooked. So after you've forged...
And forged is hammering the red hot steel?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. After you've forged it, which is a traumatic event for the steel, you have to first normalize it. So that is heating it up to critical temperature, about 1500 degrees, kind of glowing orange color, and let it air cool. At least 2 or 3 times in my opinion, but once maybe you can get by with. But I wonder if, running with the analogies, if normalizing is almost like a father welcoming his son into masculinity. But that alone isn't enough. What comes next is the real crucial moment where things can quite literally break the blade and everything can go wrong. That's the hardening process where you heat up the blade again to that same temperature, but now you're quenching it in oil really, really quickly and really violently. Japanese swords are quenched in water. Most Western swords, European, Scandinavian, Norse are quenched in oil, and it's just the nature of the blade shapes and the metallurgy. But so much can go wrong in the quench, and if you don't normalize, like I said, everything's going to go wrong. Now, once you've hardened a blade, and in an analogy of the human life, that could be a loved one dying, a divorce, a breakup, an illness that you're now diagnosed with. I don't know. If you stay in that hardened, bitter, scared place, you're not going to be an effective person. After I quench a blade, and it is extremely hard, it's not quite like glass level brittle, but if I was to take a hardened blade and just throw it against the ground, it would shatter, at least into a couple pieces. And so after the hardening process, you have to temper. And I think this is what a lot of people, Christian and non-Christian alike, really lack in their life as they go through a traumatic experience, and they don't seek the tempering process. Because, a little bit cheesy and cliche, but I think it's a true statement, the statement of you either get bitter or better. It's kind of true after the hardening process. Tempering, to be more clear, is heating it up not to that same level of heat. So tempering after you've quenched is really only to like 400 or 500 degrees in a blade, and that it does remove a little bit of the hardness, but it allows for a bit of springiness, a little bit of flexibility.
Right.
So then the blade's still hard, but you can take it into battle, and it can clash with armor or another blade, and it won't break and it won't chip.
What's it like to be really into and doing these amazing things where, this one, I could use this in my kitchen.
Yeah, it's a chef knife.
But, your swords are really never going to be used.
Yeah.
Is that a bummer to you, or I'm glad they're not used?
I hope nobody uses them against another human.
Yeah.
My swords are fully functional and real. They're razor sharp, and I think that's why people are attracted to them. It's a symbol, whether it's bringing to life, a mythic, epic story like Tolkien's Legendarium, or King Arthur, Beowulf, those old epic sagas that I love so much. Regardless of the motive or the reason why somebody wants a fully functional sword, I love it because I think it really awakens. Again, even though I have a heart for young men, men or women, it's so cool to see somebody pick up a sword because it changes their demeanor. They straighten up. There's the atmosphere in the room changes, especially if somebody as crazy and unpredictable as you is holding the blade. You
Like I'm holding a blade? I'm holding a blade.
Exactly.
I can't control it.
So it's cool to see how people change. Some people get scared when they hold a blade. They might not have the self-confidence to know, can I wield this safely? And I like to view the sword as a barometer of the human heart. Swords don't kill people. People kill people. I think the sword, symbolically and
Are
historically.
you part of the NSA, the National Swordsman Association? Because
I
I understand their lobbying, their lobbying arm is really coming out of Congress. And
I should start it. That'd be
yeah.
But I think
you can join the NSA and get a free tote bag for a sword.
Wait, is it?
And a magazine.
The NSA is the spying on Americans too as well. We might be
okay.
competing with
I
them.
guess so. It wouldn't work
Dang
out.
it.
Yeah, right.
Copyright issues. Well, I'll start that, but and I'll explain the fact that I think swords bring out what's already in the human heart. And as a believer, I believe we've all got evil in our hearts and good. And it's up to us, and by the grace of God, where we take our lives. We take ownership of our actions. I'm not a victim to anybody else's choices or things that happen to me. And a sword is, I think, a symbol of responsibility. And
A few months ago, I was down in Texas. I was doing a men's event down there. We had rented, actually the guy just let us use his land, middle of Texas, and hogs are a massive problem in Texas. Like if you can go hog hunting, you must go hog hunting just because hogs need to be killed.
Yeah.
Like in Texas and Florida, they have a female hog has 3 litters a year. By the time she's on her 3rd litter, the first litter is having babies. I learned this from a hog biologist. And so they're just running rampant, destroying the whole landscape and everything. And the biologist said to decrease the population by 7, or by 1, you have to kill 7 hogs. And so they get this one guy who's land, I guess his son gets hyper creative. They go out and they get their dogs and they sick the dogs on the things. And then someone picks up the back legs, and then they'll stab it to death. And his son was making a sword because he wanted to do like a sword hack thing. And I just looked at this rudimentary thing. He was just grinding a piece of metal inside of a garage.
Yeah.
What would you imagine the difference is between what he's doing to just get a stock piece of metal sharp enough to stab a pig versus what you're doing in the process? What's the, I got to think that yours,
Sure.
What is it?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna make fun of or look down on anybody who's just hogging away on a little grinder from, Home Depot making any kind of sword-shaped object. That's cool. There's something admirable and awesome in that, and functional. It's he's making a tool in that case. I've actually got buddies who, out in Colorado and Arizona, they're the same thing. Hogs running wild. It can be a danger to kids and animals around. And guys who own our Coal Iron Works presses here at the shop, they'll forge spears, like literally hog hunting spears on their machines and with their grinders at the forge.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the difference is,
we need to do a hog hunting episode. the 1,000 ways to kill a hog. We need to do that sometime.
There you go. Just trigger all of the vegans.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. People are loving this podcast.
Yes, but the difference in my case is by no means better or worse. I think the difference is I'm trying to make. It's an art piece, it's an artifact, but it's a functional tool that I hope nobody uses for its intended purpose. It's a symbol. I want to take massive amounts of respect and admiration for historical bladesmiths and living bladesmiths that I'm working on the shoulders of, guys I've learned from and appreciating the craft, even if they're frenemies and colleagues in competition. Right. I have to give credit where credit's due.
But the bar stock I buy at Home Depot, I could sharpen that down on my wheel and make it sharp. But your metal, is it that bar stock that's just bent over and banged and bent it over and bent it, or is it?
So a lot of people don't realize that there's different types of steel. Right. It's even beyond just like there's different types of wood. There's countless variables that you can pour into steel and its metallurgy. Is there vanadium? Is there chromium? What's the carbon content?
Like what about Valyrian steel?
Yeah, Valyrian. I'd like to get my hands on some of that. I didn't mention Andy and I.
Nod to all of you Game of Thrones geeks.
Valyrian is Game of Thrones.
Yes. And the other one after that. It was Game of Thrones and.
Is it the Marvel Black Panther steel? What is it?
I don't know what that one's called.
What is it? I should know because I worked on a Marvel movie. I forgot to share that.
Oh, really?
Andy and I, our first big gig was making. I'll grab it.
Yeah, what?
In the first Thor movie.
Yes.
The gatekeeper, big burly guy in the golden armor.
No kidding. This is it?
Yeah. So
Come on.
This is the original hilt mold parts that I carved.
Wow.
That we got cast in bronze. So I was 21, Andy was 20, and I dropped out of college to do this craft full time. And so that was obviously a life-changing experience.
The guy's
for us.
the Iris, so there's the actor's name. This is the mold.
Yeah. So talked with Kenneth Branagh, the director, and all those guys, and that was a fun experience. But
and you're coming along here with a knife and carving all these things?
Yeah. So all the detail work you're seeing in carvings and in the blades is my carving work. But what were we talking about with the steel?
Yeah, Valyrian steel.
Yeah. So there's different types of steel, and anybody can buy a good quality bar of steel. Like one of my favorites is 1075. That number correlates to how much carbon content is in it. People don't realize the difference between iron and steel is carbon content. So the more carbon, the more brittle and hard it can be. And you don't want too much, otherwise it'll shatter. The right amount and heat treating it properly is what makes an effective and sharp blade. And so anybody can take a random piece of mild steel is soft steel, and they can sharpen it. It's not going to hold an edge. It's not going to, be resilient long term. But if you want to make a true sword that stands the test of time, there's so many variables.
And this is how you make your living. This is how you pay the bills. When did you pass over from I'm playing with metal, it's a nice little hobby, I'm learning things as a kid. When did you cross over from that to no, I think this just has to be my life?
I've actually kind of never done anything else other than working at a laundromat for a couple of years when I was in high school. And at that time, I was just, sneaking sword scabbards behind the counter at the laundromat and carving them and creeping the poor, people who were coming in to do their laundry.
Yeah, right.
I've always been a sword maker, because like I mentioned, Andy and I started when we were 11, 12, and massive thank you to our fathers for kicking us in the rear and inspiring us. They would take us to different trade shows, conferences where old geezers are hanging out,
right.
drinking coffee, complaining about their lives, but also around amazing tools.
But you don't remember, like, when you had a strategic, when you made a strategic decision, when you said, this is how I'm going to earn my living. Do you remember when that was?
I think for me personally, as an artist, my goal, my plan was to go to art school, and I did for a season before I dropped out, thanks to this sword. And I still do art and illustration. I do, book illustrations for friends and colleagues, and magazine stuff and published material. But so I'm an illustrator. I'm an artist. I like painting and drawing, but my main passion is the tactile, visceral nature of forging steel and sharpening it and all that jazz, and it blends together. So the time-wise, when I really decided that, that project was a huge catalyst for me to realize, I'm not going to get a 9-to-5 graphic design job or just try to do book illustrations. I want to do swords instead. And when Andy and I were in college, our freshman year, we were trying to sail 2 ships at the same time, one of college and having good grades and the other of starting a business, and it was blowing up, and we couldn't keep up with the orders. So, and that's when, God dropped us the overwhelming opportunity of working on a big movie, which wasn't as glamorous as it is. I think a lot of people idolize a job like mine. I think, honestly, if I'm being really honest, at the time, it was an idol, an unrealistic, unhealthy idol of mine of like, man, if I can just work on a movie, I'll be set, I'll be satisfied, all my dreams will come true. And God's like, oh, really? Here you go. And there was a lot of setbacks, a lot of negatives to that. And it was really humbling to realize, you know what? I need to find my joy and satisfaction in my relationship with Christ and who the heck I am, and my friends and family around me. And this is a great craft, but it doesn't define me. If God decides to take my eyes or my hands tomorrow, to him be the glory.
So all those swords in a movie like that, they're not all crafted by someone like you. They're just, most of them.
Mad respect for I've got a lot of great friends in the film industry. Friends at, shout out to my friends at What a Workshop, who made all the swords for Lord of the Rings and Narnia and Last Samurai and all that jazz. My buddy Tony Swatton in California, he did Pirates of the Caribbean and all sorts of other stuff. Actually, he made the other swords in Thor. And a lot of those guys are capable of doing, the work I do.
Of course, the budget couldn't support it.
Yeah, but when it comes to a film production, a lot of the blades are aluminum, and that's fine. That's fun.
It's got to be.
I just finished working on an indie film, and the design was this wild, impractical but really cool double-sided axe, and which is crazy in and of itself. But then the axe heads were like this big, and I'm like, I'm not gonna make it out of steel. The person wielding it was this young, amazing actress, and I'm like, I'm gonna be kind to her and make it out of aluminum instead of steel, so she can actually swing it. So yeah, there's a lot of not shortcuts, but simplifications in production.
So how many guys are there like you in the country? Like if there's someone says, hey, I wanna buy a sword like this, how much would this be? About something like this.
I'm gonna respectfully not share my prices. Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the high digits of
high 5 digits, high 4 digits.
A very nice car. Let's just say that.
Okay. So in that price range, then, how many guys like you are in the market to do that and satisfy that order?
There's a good handful. So I should be clear.
Handful?
Bladesmithing in terms of knife making is kind of in a renaissance. It's exploding, and that's really great. I love it, thanks to shows like Forged in Fire on History Channel that I'm sure a lot of people listening or watching this will know. Friends of mine have gone on that. We have provided tools to that show. There's a big resurgence. So there's, hundreds of thousands of guys making blades, forging blades in America alone.
Hundreds of thousands?
In America, for sure.
Really?
I could be off in my calculations, but I think so. Blade Show in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the biggest knife shows in the world, is unbelievable. I think they have 10,000 people a year just crammed into the auditorium there at Blade Show. We go every year, and it's a blast, big party. But, my specific quirky style of blending history and a bit of mythology and folklore and Tolkienian, Arthurian, Beowulf legend stuff, maybe a handful of guys, and they're all guys I love and respect dearly and have learned a lot from and also compete against in a friendly manner. So
right.
It's fun.
All right, so we're talking about the armor of God. There's all kind of defensive things that are in the armor of God in the book of Ephesians. There's the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, all these things that kind of protect in battle. The only thing that is offensive in all of these items is the sword, which I connect with because I'm very offensive. I'm an equal opportunity offender. I decrease the size of our listeners and the size of Crossroads all the time by my offensiveness. But this is the only sword or the only thing that is offensive. It's the sword of spirit. It's prayer that can be offensive. Yeah. You know this. You know that. I know you're a big sword guy. You probably geeked out on this entirely. We gave you this project. You're a believer. Yep. So I'm curious with all this. What sword am I going to have to be able to kill something if I wanted to? What are we thinking here today?
Absolutely. So I love blending history and a bit of modern sensibilities and my own original designs together. And so I've kind of got a hybrid sword for us.
Yeah, okay.
Most people are familiar with the more typical Crusader era sword that's kind of a T shape or a cross shape. And that's all well and fine, but I have a much deeper love for ancient swords of biblical era, honestly. And a lot of those were bronze. We'll be forging steel today. And so this is not a one-to-one exact historical duplicate of anything, but it has healthy nods to a lot of ancient swords from the biblical era. It's also nice because it's a little bit easier and quicker to achieve in a day.
Right.
As long as we aggressively forge it and
like
put you
it.
to work. So that's what we're going to be doing.
So this is true to scale, like my hand up here? All right.
Yeah. This is the scale we're aiming at. So got a lot of work ahead of us to forge it out, grind it to shape, heat treat it like I was explaining, and you'll have a fully functional razor sharp sword.
I love it. So before we go forge, I just got to ask, like when I look at that versus some of these other swords you have up here, like this guy.
Yeah.
Is it, and this one's sharp. I can tell, I got to be very, actually one side is, the other side isn't. Yeah. But so is this what my metal will look like or not?
Not necessarily. So I think what would be fun on yours, like I alluded to, is to leave some of the forged texture, which I think really tells a story.
I like that. I agree.
Of course, a lot of historical swords were perfectly clean and shiny, as this blade is, straight, flat, and symmetrical. Your blade's going to be straight and symmetrical and all that jazz. But in the center core, I wanted to almost tell a story of every hammer blow.
I love that.
See that.
Well, I love that just because, first of all, it's the way it would have been. It's more historical. I also just like it as a personal ethic of mine. Things I design or do or build, I like having the rawness, the character. We're all in process with God. Yeah. And I like things that look like it's in process. Like when we bought our first building, or we built out our first building at Crossroads, which is my day job, we had, at that point, people who were doing churches and larger churches, everything was nice finishes. Nice drywall everywhere, tile, nice carpet that you'd see in a hotel, nice ceilings. And when we came in, it wasn't for masculine purposes, it wasn't even for budget purposes, but we said, no, let's leave the raw concrete from the lumber warehouse, and let's actually leave the bolts that were bolting them down, and let's just grind them off, and let's actually have the outline of the green paint from the racks there, because we want people to feel like, hey, this place doesn't need to be real pretty, and maybe I don't need to be real pretty either.
Amen.
So that's an ethic that I love that you're thinking about in the sword.
Cool. So that's my vision for it, and we'll get forging.
Awesome. Okay, let's go before I break something or cut myself. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It's a product I use every day. I started taking AG1 because I don't watch my diet too closely, but I know that I'm getting all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients I can, as well as hydrating with 12 ounces of water right off the bat at the beginning of the day. One scoop of AG1, it's got 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. And it doesn't taste like it. It actually tastes great. AG1 is a micro-habit with big benefits. For less than $3 a day, you can take care of your health and invest in your future. It's recommended by professional athletes, health experts, and me. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packets with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/aggressivelife. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/aggressivelife to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutrition insurance. So go get you some, and let's get back to the show.
All right, you ready to fire up the propane forge? So
So this is where we're going to heat up the steel before we bang it. So this is our basically oven, our coal-fired thing that you would see in the movies. It's this, because this is more efficient.
Historically, what people are used to seeing in movies like Lord of the Rings and all that jazz, it's going to be a coal bed of coals to forge in. And that's great. I forge that way too. We don't have any setup in this shop. We do a lot of high-impact, really fast-paced forging in here, and so a propane forge is clean. It's a great way to do the pattern-welded, layered steel, and it's a lot of fun to use. So.
Anytime we're lighting things, I'm very happy. So go ahead and light this.
All right.
Oh, now we're living.
Yeah. There we go. All right, so we're gonna forge.
Love it.
We're gonna forge, and I should probably summarize what the heck forging is. Forging is the heating up of really any type of metal, but in this case specifically steel, and it's the heating up of said steel to manipulate it, to move it, to bend it to our will, and make it into the sword that we're envisioning. So this is a piece of 1075 high carbon steel. I love this steel. It's forgiving, but it's still a good quality. And so I've got the tip shape roughed out on the grinder, but we need to refine it, bring it to a point, and that takes some precision. It's not about wailing away as hard as you can. It's really more about the precision of your hammer blows.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let you put it in the fire.
All righty, let's do it. Oh.
That's all right. Yeah, we'll kind of get it centered. Yeah, right about there. So, actually, I might do this. Let's do that. All right.
Perfect.
So I'm going to do some hammer strikes,
okay,
and then I'm going to let you go on the next heat. I'm going to walk you through proper form and stance. You really want to let the weight of the hammer do the work and lift it up, and you're basically just letting it fall. And this is not a massive chunk of steel. To move this metal is not going to take crazy, insane Hulk smashes, Okay. So again, our goal is to kind of refine that shape and get that point. So you're good to go. It's not too hot to grab there, so get a good grip. Forge.
Woo! That's hot.
Yes, it is.
Oh, dag.
I think I've just burned all the nerve cells out of my right hand, so looks good. It's getting a little bit cold, so now we're getting into the region where you don't want to put it back in.
Okay. Give it a little straighten.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right.
Now we're ready for the crucial step of heat treating the blade, which is three crucial steps. Step one is normalizing. And again, normalizing is we're going to heat it up to critical temperature. We want the blade nice and evenly an orange heat, and then we're going to let it cool down. Then we're ready to heat it up again to that same temperature, a nice even orange heat. We're heading towards trauma, we're heading towards the quench, which is going to harden the blade. So hardening, quenching it in this oil, and then after, whether it's with you or on my own time, I'm going to very carefully temper the blade, which will make it have a little less hardness, but it'll have the flexibility, be battle worthy is what you can call it. So this time I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to do the back and forth.
Good.
And this is really crucial. From the time I hand it to you to the time you quench it, we don't want to lollygag. I'm going to pull it out. You're going to take it immediately, bring it down.
It here, bring it down,
bring it over
this way.
And quench it all the way to, don't shove it down and poke a hole in the bottom of the tank, but do quickly bring it down all the way. Until you feel
and I just hold it there. And I just hold it in there like that?
Yeah, and then you'll only hold it for like 5 seconds, and then I'm gonna take it from you. I'm gonna check it because once you've quenched it, I'm gonna take it out. Okay. We'll also do a cool. If you take it out soon enough, then the whole blade catches on fire, and that's just fun.
Cool.
Not necessary, but it's fun. Yeah. And that's gonna be the gameplay. Now, be warned: when you quench it, very likely flames will lick up.
Okay.
If that's all the way down, it's not gonna burn you too bad. You might lose a little bit of hair, but join the club. It's fine.
No, fine.
So, are we ready?
Ready.
Quench your
ready,
sword.
Santa.
Count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go. Nicely done. Okay. So, back.
Badassery right there.
It's very Conan-esque.
Oh, man. Let's go kill something.
Yeah. Okay. That is a hardened sword blade, and it does look pretty straight. So I don't know if I'll need to do much. Now I'm going to just gently leave this here for 1 sec. Get these guys on so I don't burn myself too bad. And check how straight that is. So this kind of gray color you're seeing on the blade, that is a good telltale sign that we have achieved what's called martensite. And martensite is a specific type of grain structure in the steel that means you have hardened it. You've upped the hardness quality. So, okay, I've got a very brief window of time here where I can quickly check it. It's really not bad. So you did a fantastic job heating it up and normalizing it. Good job, sir. All right, so we successfully forged the blade. We ground it to shape. You did a beautiful job refining that grip, so it's going to feel good in battle. Hopefully not against your interns and staff here. Be kind of them. They might have a sword too, okay? And then we heat treated it, which is the most crucial point because a lot of stuff can go wrong. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who have watched shows like Forged in Fire that friends and colleagues might have gone on. You know, if they rush it, if they get panicked, if your head's not in the game and you quench a blade wrong, the entire blade can snap. You know, things can go wrong, and so it takes time. It takes a lot of confidence in doing it, but we did a great job. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for bringing this to life. So, and my next steps is I'm going to temper the blade like we talked about. I'm going to put some form of a nice, comfortable, battle-ready grip on it, and then a leather sheath that could go on the belt of righteousness, right?
Right. This is fantastic. Man, thanks so much for teaching me something that I knew nothing about, and I'm nowhere near ready to do it myself on this, but this was a huge learning experience for me, and I think this is going to really help everybody better understand what might have been going on in the Apostle Paul's mind when he talked about taking the sword of the Spirit. So you've taken us to a new level. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for listening. For all things aggressive living, why don't you head over to briantome.com. Find my new book, Move, a guide to get up and go forward, as well as articles and much, much more. And no matter where you listen to podcasts, why don't you take a second and leave us a rating, leave us a review. It really, really helps us drive new listeners to the show. We want to help as many people as possible, just like we may have helped you. We want to help others. So why don't you help us out? And if you want to connect, find me on Instagram, @BrianTome. Aggressive Life with Brian Tome is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.